This presentation is on how to develop an attitude of gratitude instead of a sentiment of resentment during the COVID pandemic. My name is Dr. Jonathan Sikorsky, and I'm a licensed psychologist at Tria Orthopedics in Bloomington and in Woodbury, Minnesota. So, gratitude is described as an appreciation of what is valuable and meaningful to oneself. It is a general state of thankfulness and appreciation. During this COVID pandemic, it's really easy to get caught up in all the things that are going poorly or what are wrong or what's shut down, and it can become increasingly difficult to find things to appreciate. As a result, we kind of have this culmination of negative experiences that eventually add up to feeling just kind of low, lethargic, irritable, and kind of hopeless. So the goal of today's presentation is to talk about different strategies that we can use to foster gratitude in our day-to-day lives. So gratitude is a topic that has been incredibly popular. If you've been watching the news lately, I'm sure you've heard of different psychologists and speakers talking about the importance of gratitude. It's also quite popular in different religions or belief structures, philosophers, and all of that. And here's just some examples of that. Hence the name, a grateful heart is good medicine. One thing I did want to touch on is what gratitude is not. Oftentimes when people feel like, oh, I need to be grateful, it comes off as a feeling of like I'm indebted to somebody else, or I have to be grateful to appease someone, or it's a way of idealizing others, downplaying yourself. Or in some cases, people feel like we have to have gratitude or we need to give things in order to receive something else. And that's really not what gratitude is. It's not about controlling other people. It's not about manipulation. It is about doing some good with no expectation of something in return, or noticing the good as well. So why does this matter? This is a doctor named Hans Selye, a very famous researcher on happiness and stress. And he found across his lifelong career of stress that among all emotions, there is one which more than any other accounts for the presence or absence of stress in human relations, and that is the feeling of gratitude. So right now, as people have spent numerous weeks now in close confines with family or children, there is a lot of relational stress that is going on. And again, finding different ways of showing gratitude and appreciation can go a long ways in ameliorating some of that relational stress. And, just to show your work, over the past 20 years, there have been over 40 studies looking and examining the benefits of gratitude on happiness. And you can see here some of the outcomes. I'll link to some of the research articles at the end of the presentation here. But from a mile-high view, people tend to be more optimistic. They have improved sleep, increased energy, better goal achievement. They feel like they're kinder, more social relationships, and just feel more resilient all around, which is a good thing. But how do we foster gratitude? In life and in medicine, oftentimes there aren't really simple solutions. 1 + 1 does not always equal 2. Oftentimes we have to look at strategies, and one strategy here for fostering gratitude is just to acknowledge that something good happened. So out in the environment, someone held the door for you so you didn't have to touch it during the COVID season. Someone covered their mouth when they coughed. Your child didn't interrupt your Zoom meeting telling you they needed to use the restroom. But acknowledge something good happened and recognize that the source of that good is outside of you, so that there's good out in the world. And this often leads to feelings of gratitude and overall just happiness. But if we contrast that with depression, it's kind of the opposite. We discount external positive events. There's nothing good that happens, and we internalize negativity. When our children struggle to complete their schoolwork at home, we're like, if I were a better parent, they'd get this done. If someone is feeling sick, we're like, oh, if I was a better caretaker, they'd be better. And we just start to have this pattern where we believe that bad things happen, there's nothing we can do about it, and it's always going to be this way. And that, after a while, leads to pretty significant depression. I would say clinically at this point with a lot of my patients, it's been about 3-4 weeks of this quarantine. A lot of people are dealing with the depression piece right now. And just the culmination of stress, isolation, and loneliness. And it's hard to really find appreciation for good things. So suffice that to say, if we were to control for all the events that have ever happened in your life, the positive, the negative, the melodies, the tragedies, and we controlled for them statistically, we'd only be able to account for about 10% of your overall dispositional happiness. And the rest of happiness is either genetics, that component, how much dopamine, serotonin, and all that you have, or our choices, the lens that we use to view the world. And we actually have a lot of control over that lens if we are intentional about it. But unfortunately, to date, our brains are like Velcro for negativity and Teflon for positivity. So it's really easy to kind of get into a pattern, especially with social media, email releases, updates on Twitter, all of that, an outlook that the world is in a pretty scary, bad place. And eventually, if that's all we hear, from an evolutionary standpoint, we cling to those and we start only looking for those in the environment because from an evolutionary standpoint, we want to survive. We want to know what those threats are. And when something good happens, we're like, good, great, gone. And it's out of our brain. So we have different ways of reprogramming how we find, good things or appreciate positive things that happen. And one of these is called the stop, look, and go example. It's finding just moments during the day that you can pause and reflect. So one of them is gratitude journaling. This is becoming increasingly popular. I'm going to spend a little more time talking about it in a minute here, but that is definitely a worthwhile strategy. If you are someone who enjoys a hot beverage in the morning, when the steam is coming off of the cup, take a moment to reflect or just to say one thing that you're grateful for. Use it as a discriminative stimulus if you're a psychologist, something that you use as a reminder to engage in a behavior. When you're at a red light, oftentimes people are not feeling very happy or grateful at a red light. We tend to white knuckle it here in Minnesota. But use that as a moment to stop, pause, and reflect. Try to, again, find something that you're appreciative of. Complimenting somebody else. One of the easiest ways to improve our own dispositional happiness is to give someone a compliment, because that's what usually happens. We get a compliment in return, and it's pretty awesome. Random acts of kindness. This is huge right now. I can't tell you how many different patients and family members I know who are doing their best to create masks or PPE equipment, deliver groceries and all of that for our friends and neighbors. Doing those types of things improves the recipient's feelings of gratitude and happiness and the person who does the act as well. Practicing mindfulness, going for mindful walks. When you're walking outside, don't be a zombie on the phone. Look for budding flowers. Look for the sun. Try to make eye contact from a physical distance of 6 feet, of course, and say hello to somebody. Writing I'm grateful for on little post-it notes. Easy to do. And probably one of the biggest things is writing a thank you card to someone. Let someone know that you appreciate what they do. At this time, there are people who get a lot of attention for the work they are doing, but try to find people who are behind the scenes and say, hey, I really appreciate that you called that patient, scheduled an appointment, handled something. It goes a really long way. Goes a long way at work, goes a long way in your relationships with your children and partners. So probably the biggest strategy that people use is gratitude journaling, and that's writing out 2 to 5 things every day that you're grateful for. The purpose of this is to start training your brain to recognize that, hey, good things happen every day out in the environment. The goal with this as well is to recognize other people. Your spouse or partner might not be the greatest person all the time, but hey, this time they remembered to unload the dishwasher. Or better yet, they filled it up and ran it before they shut the door of it. Just different things like that. So you can look for ways how to include how painful experiences strengthened you or provided new opportunities. The reason why this is so important is that when our brains, bully brain kicks on and is like nothing good is happening, it's all bad, it doesn't matter what you do, you can challenge it with actual factual things. You're like, nope, yesterday, my kids let me sleep in. Or yesterday I was able to get to work because there's no traffic. Try to find those different things. They add up over time. But, easier said than done. I often recommend with patients that they use pen and paper, because when we pick up our phones, we get all the distractions of media and emails and text messages. So, plus, there's just something beneficial about externalizing it. So, I'd encourage you to, dust off a notebook somewhere, grab a pen, and have at it. You might say to yourself, well, time is a zero-sum game. With this COVID pandemic, we're working from home, we're trying to relax at home. There's not an additional 3 hours in the day for adulting. But see if you can trade 5 minutes, of watching TV or the news, or perusing social media, venting at the work water cooler, or just engaging in negative coping skills. Try to see if you can trade just 5 minutes of one of those for doing some gratitudes, recognizing something, writing someone a letter. Again, it makes a difference. But oftentimes I encounter patients who are like, I really can't feel gracious, or I don't want to. It is like just any other skill. It takes effort. It takes a culmination of skills over time and a little bit of momentum. So you might start, instead of gratitude journaling, if that's a little too out there for you, just verbally thanking someone for something during the day. As you do that, you might slowly begin to build in more gratitude exercises. And again, 6 to 8 days of engaging in reflection and gratitude, you start to change the way you view the world. So a little challenge here for you, if you've made it this far in the video. I would challenge just about anybody to write a letter or a thank you card to someone and direct it to a person individually. Just thanking them for, hey, you made these types of contributions, or I noticed you helped someone with this, or you said this and it really encouraged me when I was feeling down. Doesn't need to be perfect. I have a lot of fancy pens and journals. I have found that even if I buy an expensive pen, it does very little to improve my handwriting. Make it sincere and authentic, but write out, hey, you did this and it really helped me out, or this touched me, or I was moved by what you did, and deliver it to someone. Research on this has found that it does more to improve the happiness of the giver and the receiver than just about any other type of encounter that we have. So in society today, we receive 300 emails a day, and the only person who sends us a letter is our dentist on our birthday. So mail has a lot of meaning, a lot of power. If handwriting a letter is not something you can do, send out an encouraging text or an email to a colleague. And that alone will do a lot to start changing the culture of the workplace and relationships you have with other people. So a little challenge there for you. So also, I would just encourage you to remember that every day may not be good. Sometimes the grass is greener on the other side, because it literally is right now. But even though not every day may be good, there's usually something good that happens in every day. So again, try to be out there, try to start finding those little moments of sunshine, during this emotional storm that we're all in. So practicing gratitude improves your overall well-being. Most importantly, it's free. It does cost $0 to give somebody an authentic compliment. Daily practice of gratitude reduces social comparisons. It's good for materialism. It also enhances our happiness, well-being, and improves social relationships. So it's kind of low-hanging fruit on the intervention thing to feel better. Sometimes, it's hard to give from an empty bucket. So if someone starts showing you a little appreciation, we have a little bit more margin to give to others. So try to foster that within your community. So all attitudes are contagious. Just make sure yours are worth catching. So see if you can, in your own workplace or even in your own family, start leaving reminders or appreciations or gratitudes for other people, and just see kind of the profound impact that it can have in the culture. As always, we need to show our work. So if you're interested, I'll just kind of talk here for a second so you can kind of see some of these resources on gratitude. But in the end, I hope that this video finds you well, and hope you're staying safe. And most importantly, I hope you can be well.